Okay, so this is my Craftsman that's been swapped with 17.5 horsepower Briggs from a John Deere. And we've used this engine for years. We used it on the John Deere until it inevitably broke, and then we took the engine and put it on this 85-86 Craftsman. I have it apart right now so we can see everything. I believe I've had the decompression release break on the camshaft on this engine, because if you try and start it, it will lock and the starter won't overcome the pressure. I've tried going back and go over where the hard spot is to try and see if the starter can run up and start it, and it never works. It's just completely solid. I checked everything, checked the valves, checked everything. Replaced the carburetor with a Walbro one I had around. I found the only way to start it was to take the spark plug out, turn it over a few times, put the spark plug back in, hook it up, and then it would start. It would bang really heavy through the intake. It would pow, like backfire through the intake, and then start. And then once you shut it off, you'd never get it started again. So I got a part in, and I'm going to show you how to tear this down. Now, this has a cover that goes here. I've already taken off. Just spins off with two plastic, like, wing nuts. Lid comes off. You take your air filter off like this, and all these parts on here are the John Deere supplied themed parts. So this is like particular for this. Intex and related engines will have like a different air cleaner. You've got these bolts here, which are like 10s. Yep, they're like 10 millimeter. You have these bolts. They hold the cover on. You got one here, and then one. You've got one back here. And one mirroring it on the other side. Stock, your plastic fuel pump is going to be right here with a couple of clips. You remove those clips and the fuel pump will come off. When the bolts are out, this can lift up. You just watch the oil dipstick here, or you can take it out. You just lift it straight up. Cover comes off. It's a good idea to unhook the spark plug before doing anything, because we're probably going to be moving this around. I don't think it'll go anywhere because it's locked, but it's what it is. Probably first thing before I get started tearing into it is drain the oil. You have a bunch of different oil spouts for these engines. This one has a longer one that juts out the side with an O-ring. It looks like this, and it turns and then pops off, and then the oil will come out. I've got it parked on an incline like this, so it should help it drain, and then I'll probably get a jack and lean it so that it drains into a bottle a bit better. The oil that's in here is contaminated with gasoline from when it dumped and filled the cylinder with gas a couple times due to this becoming a problem. So I have plans for that. That oil, since it's got gas in it and it's kind of, you know, it's mixed with a solvent essentially, I've got another engine that's got some crud in it that I'm going to use as a backup for this one, just in case, that I'm going to put that and run it through to get it cleaned out. I also want to disconnect the battery because it's still all connected as well, to get that out of the equation. So I'm going to see what we're looking at here and see if I can use a 2-liter to capture this. Actually, that's almost perfect size for this. Oh, it's because of the pin. It's the exact size for a 2-liter, but the pin's in the way. So if I had a notch in this 2-liter, that would be optimal. There are much better ways of doing this. I am only doing it this way because I want to I want to collect this and put it in the other engine. So if this was literally just me draining this to dispose of, then I would just have a pan under here at this point, which I believe this engine takes a what is it, 1.5 liters, I believe, total. This also gives me a chance to look at the oil after it gets in here and everything settles to see if there's any chunks that come out. Because I'm going to have to fish around in the casing for if that release failed. If it flung it and then hit somewhere and didn't just settle at the bottom, then it's chunks. Hopefully it just broke off and is sitting at the bottom of the engine. And I just pick it up, fish a spring out, and then replace it, and that's it. I'm hoping. Fingers crossed. That would make this real easy. That should be good, and then I'll dump the rest in there when the engine comes off. So yeah, that looks about right, and then there'll be a little bit left in there. I'm going to disconnect the battery and then do the fuel system. Okay, so good news, battery's already disconnected. I forgot I already did that, so I'm ahead of myself. So quick tips on the battery: always disconnect the negative, the black, first. Disconnect your ground first, your negative. That way negative things don't happen. Then disconnect your positive side. Installation, reversive removal. Red first, positive first, ground second, black second. Okay, so fuel system. Fuel system contains gas tank. We have a filter on here, we have a shut-off valve, a fuel pump, and a carburetor. So the main thing is we could take this whole entire engine off, only disconnecting one line and plugging it. We have another line that comes over here and goes to our oil dipstick for the crankcase. And we have this little line that goes from the actual engine crankcase to the carburetor air filter assembly here. We could take the whole entire engine off, only disconnecting these two lines. That is a possibility. I'm going to take a bolt and I'm going to take the fuel line off here and clamp it. Which I'll be making a video on this carburetor because I actually had to craft a inlet for it. There we go. Plug it with a bolt. Put the clamp on lightly. You never snug these clamps down on bolts because if you do, they're going to be a pain in the ass to take off. So I'll do that, hang it behind the clutch here. I feel like this could get broken in the middle of moving it, so I'm going to go ahead and take it off. An 11mm socket fits these. Which everything on here can be done with a very basic set of tools. So like even a cheap set of tools. The main thing that's going to require a specialty tool is John Deere's Muffler, which I have a whole rant on that I'm going to make, because the general Briggs & Stratton, Husqvarna, regular muffler construction on these engines is nice, and they're one piece. The Deere one is not. It's two pieces, and it's ridiculous, but that's for another video. Now we're going to go over to the oil dipstick and disconnect that line. And this crankcase line just pulls off of the plastic here. It's literally just, you press it on there. Okay, so this dipstick only uses a pinch clamp. You can use any pair of pliers for this. I'm just using these fancy ones because it's what's near me. You actually technically don't even have to remove this line. If you want, you can just pull this tube out exactly how it is right now and just flip it over on top of the gas tank, and you don't even have to touch it. Me, I'm gonna touch it. So this is essentially your vacuum line for your fuel pump to be able to pump fuel. So the engine spins, it draws vacuum in, and then it basically sucks on the pump to send gas in. I'm going to disconnect. This is your regulator to your alternator. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect it on this model. These are lifesavers because then you don't run your battery It actually recharges your battery as you mow, which is very nice and cool. So for now, I'm gonna take the headlamp wiring out and just kind of dip it over here. This is not stock, this is a horn I haven't hooked up yet. Okay, and then we have the ground, one of the wires that goes to the coil, which we can unhook, which we can either unhook it at the coil or we can unhook up here at the chassis. I'm just gonna unhook it at the chassis here and then tuck the connector. So that's the wiring dealt with, except for taking the regulator off and disconnecting the starter. So for the regulator, I'm just gonna be using an 8mm socket here to remove that, like so. Okay, now this is entirely loose. We could pop this out, but I'm not actually gonna remove the stick until I'm ready to lift this engine. Okay, starter is an 11. So we're gonna disconnect that real quick. There that goes. I'm just gonna hook the wire under there to get it out of the way, put the nut back where it lives. Which you can remove these starter bolts to go ahead and get the starter off, or you can pull it off after the engine's coming out. But that's all of our wiring taken care of. I just now have to deal with this stupid muffler. This muffler, as you can see, does not use a normal bolt. It uses these hex socket bolts. So I'm gonna have to go find the hex socket real quick. This is an H6 hex socket, which is what fits this. We're just gonna undo these and pull the muffler off, which I've made this a single piece so it drops out of the bottom of the frame. I've got to brace it while I'm undoing it. Come on. Be real careful not to bang up my gasket here, because I put a good gasket on here a while back that should be reusable, as long as I don't tear it up. There's my gasket. And muffler drops out the bottom. And as you can see, this is all one piece now. I actually welded up the pipe onto this muffler ages ago. John Deere had designed this to where this slid down into the muffler, which made no sense because then it wasn't entirely sealed, but there's a muffler. And I'm just gonna take the bolts and put them back into the head here. Now here's the fun part, linkages. There's this big plate on the side, so you have your lever up top that regulates the speed. It goes to this slider here. This slider moves an arm which moves this one. And there's also a governor on the engine that regulates the rev that goes up here. So we have to disconnect the cable linkage from here for this to come with the engine. And then we'll eventually, when we go to take it apart, there's a bolt here and a bolt here that you remove. There's another one, I think. Yeah, there's 3 of them. There's one here, one there, and one here that look like 8mm that you pull off. Which, to do that adequately, we're gonna have to take the carb off anyway, so I'm gonna start with the carb. So these were 11mm nuts that were holding the air cleaner on here. Take these out. You'll want an 8mm wrench, doesn't matter what kind. I have this fancy ratcheting wrench which makes very quick work of these. If you had a deep well 8mm socket, would also Work very well on these. If not, just take a regular wrench, hook it on there, and keep spinning it. Once you get them loose, you can spin them off. Take the studs out. Be careful with your gaskets. You can reuse it if it doesn't tear. There's the gasket. And I like to kind of position it to where I can pull this choke linkage out here, put it to the side, and then unhook our return spring here very carefully, and then linkage here. It's been a minute. There it goes. Come on. There you are. So that's our carburetor. We got that out. Just so this doesn't get broken, I'm gonna go ahead and take it off. Oh, this thing is full of gas again. Yeah, that's part of the problem, is that release. I think with it broken, for some reason it's just dumping gas. The previous carb that was on here was working fine with it, and then when I put the Walbro on there, it worked even better when I got it started. So if it's not the pressure release, I don't know what the hell is up then. I have seen people go through funky shit with the pressure release, so I'm thinking that's probably what's going on. I'm going to take the spark plug out and turn it over to get any gas that's in here out. Gas everywhere. Completely flooded. I'm gonna go ahead and take the coil off here so I don't damage it, because it's the only one I've got. This is just 8mm on these two. And that is on there. Really on there. Okay. Okay, there we go. Got it. Okay. So I've got the coil unhooked. Put that to the side. This little screw right here, you can use a Torx bit for some reason, or you can use an 8mm socket. And only one of those things just about everybody has, which is a socket, because they're cheap and they're easy to get and not a damn Torx bit. So that's what we're using. We'll just kind of move it and unhook it like that. While I'm here, this is easy enough to get to. These are probably only 8s as well. Yeah, for this bracket. We've got one here. We've got one here. There's one right below and behind where we disconnected that. Now there's a spring that connects all these linkages at one point on this bracket. So I've got to be real careful and note where and how that spring moves. Okay, let me get you in here so you can see it. Okay, so here's the bracket. There's a spring here that hooks on to the bracket there, and then onto the governor there. That's how that looks. So to take that off, I'm going to disconnect that. Now, this isn't necessary. You could leave this on there, but I do not want a chance bending or breaking anything, so it's coming off. There we go. Yeah, good thing I took it off. This is dirty. It needs to be cleaned and lubricated and given some love. These springs have the same bends, so they can go on both sides either way. I don't think this thing's gonna fall off, but let me see if I can easily get it out. Yeah, I can. So here's the governor. Here's these linkages. You can see the return spring kind of dips in, hooks into that. And this one I think goes in, swivels, and goes up. That should have everything on the top. We've got all the electrical undone. I'm gonna go ahead and take the coil wire and fish it out the back here so that it doesn't get lost. I'm just gonna throw it in the frame. Now it's going to be mounting bolts and the pulley that's under the bottom. 4 bolts that come up through the frame into the engine to mount it are 1/2-inch bolts. So those will take a 1/2-inch socket. The pulley that comes down, I'm using the John Deere one. That pulley bolt for this engine is a 5/8. So a 5/8 socket or spark plug socket will work fine on that. So we're underneath the mower. Here's the pulley. 5/8 bolts in here. We'll want to take the belt, the drive belt, and pull it off of the pulley here. And goes around another one. But the goal is to get it loose. There we go. It's loose. And our mount bolts, here's one. That's what they look like that hold the engine on. So we got like one here. One over here. And then 2 mirroring on the other side. So like over here, and then like under here, there's one. So those are the 4 there. Those are 1/2-inch. Okay, so I have it lifted. It's starting to get cold. I'm gonna kind of do this quick. There we go. Oh, fun. Shit. It's stuck. It really is, isn't it? Come on. I'm gonna thread the bolt in, just 2, put this on there, and then give it a tap. I have keeper hooks on the bottom of the engine, on the bottom of the frame, and the hole in the frame is big enough to lift the engine out of with the pulley, but the hooks are there. The hooks are evenly spaced, so they wouldn't bend the pulley if I pulled the engine up. So my theory here is with a bolt out of the pulley, if I can get this unbolted, I can put it level and then I can pick the engine up and pop it, and maybe it'll loosen that pulley for me. And we're gonna see what happens with this. Put the transmission into a gear so it makes it harder to move. Let's see what happens. It moved a little bit. I'm gonna take some of that oil and drip it down into the crank. Gonna have to get creative. Got it. I hope that caught that on camera. Okay, so the process. I put some oil in between the crank and where this pulley goes on. especially where the slot where this little key piece goes in. And then I bumped it to where it came down about this far. Then I tapped it from the bottom here to go back up so that it would work the oil in. And I kept doing that while using that branch of maple. This one wedged in between here, alternating, going between here and here in the frame, just bumping it both sides. And then when I got further down, then I started doing it this way because the frame was right there. And I would go hammer it up with a hammer, bump it down with maple. Hammer it up with a hammer, bump it down with this maple. And that's what did it. There it is. And as Terrell Fixes All would say, there's your dinner. And this gives me a good excuse to clean this out. When I first assembled this, it was all dirty up in here. So the keepers, these things couldn't be removed because they have nuts on them back over here. So you have to actually take the tank out to get the nuts off the back of them. That's an engine. This has a keyway here that the key in this slots into. And it goes on like that. And of course it slides all the way up to here, and then you put the bolt in. And that's where it bottoms out. But yeah, we've got a new cam, we've got a seal for here, a seal for the top if I want to do that, depending on how far I want to go. The gasket for the middle of the engine where the casing goes together, got that. The other one I'm going to build, I'm probably just going to do it with a tube of ultra black RTV. I probably won't have to take the head off of here. I mean, it wouldn't be a bad idea, but the head gasket's not bad, so there's really no point in doing that because I can do a head gasket while it's on the mower anyhow. I'm going to drain the oil out of this, and then next part will be tearing it apart, and first step will be getting into the oil pump, which is here. So, cool.